there's going to be different times where you're doing a literature review with slightly different purpose. If you are maybe in a research institute or somewhere that does data-driven stuff, you might be doing something that effectively is a literature review, but maybe not necessarily as strictly called that. And so I've got this list here, and we can kind of look at this and go, this is roughly sorted by the depth and the rigor and the size and the effort. So, I mean, I guess those of you doing a PhD, the good news and bad news is that your literature review in your PhD is probably going to be the largest, longest, hardest, most in-depth literature review you will probably ever do. Which part of the purpose of that is to make you the expert in the thing you are getting the PhD in. But there's a whole range here. If we step back a step from a PhD, for an academic journal article, I need good rigor. I need to be very careful, make sure that I've looked at the appropriate references for the thing I'm writing about. But the thing that I'm writing about isn't a 200-page PhD dissertation. It might be a 4-page, 5-page journal article. So I'm going to have to be very specific and very to the point. I'm going to need to select things that are much narrower. But then if we come a few steps back, if we think about things like policy work, grant writing, conference presentations, they still need really all of these. We never want to be doing a literature review and putting wrong stuff out there that's going to be really bad for you and for your career. But we want to that level of depth and that level of effort is going to vary depending on which one of these things there are. So I've kind of worked from the bottom upwards, but at the very top of the list, there might be sometimes, and in my work sometimes, there's times where someone might have maybe something about a particular medical procedure or a particular disease or a particular kind of training component and go, hey, can we check a fact or can we check a claim or can we just get some information about this thing? And that still needs to be correct, but I don't need to go to the huge amount of depth and the rewriting and the synthesis and all of that really deep work that I would need to do for an article or a PhD. And so I present these here because we can think about SciSpace and we can think about how AI can help us in a range of different ways. So depending on which one of these things I'm doing is going to depend very much on which components of SciSpace or whatever AI tool I'm using are going to be most useful and the way that I go about them. So I've taken all those and then I've kind of just zoomed into three. So if I just have some sort of quick reporting task, then for all of these, you can see that AI plays a role and I play a role. And at the bottom there, I've said we should be thinking about this. You should be using it to refine your thinking, but you should never be using AI to replace your thinking. If you are just using AI and copying and pasting stuff, then you add no value. I can write a bot that does that. I don't need you to do copy and pasting. You need to be adding your brain and your value to whatever you're doing. So for all of these, AI has a role, you have a role. So if I just have something where it's some quick reporting, some kind of finding and just reporting upwards in the organization, something like that, I can jump into my AI tool, I can get it to do the search. I'll say, here's my research question or the thing I want to find out. It can do the search for me, it can do the summarization for me. I still need to verify. I'm going to look bad and I'm going to risk my career if I just take that, pass it on, don't carefully check it. But I'll check it. I might edit it a little bit. I will absolutely acknowledge that I used AI, but then I'm kind of done. So for some of the things that I do now in my research role, where it's not the rigor of a journal article, it needs to be right, but it doesn't need that rigor, then SciSpace has been absolutely amazing for stuff like that. For a journal article, SciSpace is still going to be really helpful. It's going to be more of an iterative search. I'm going to search, here's some good stuff. Maybe this leads to the next thing, do another search. Maybe I kind of adjust my research question. It can help me a little bit with summarization. It can also help me chat with papers so I can kind of understand the papers more. I would need to rewrite more deeply. Then with a PhD, for the PhD, we need to think more of these AI tools. They're going to help you explore ideas. They're going to give you structured support. They're going to be really helpful chatting with the papers. But there's intellectual ownership that absolutely has to be you and only you. And so you shouldn't be thinking this will definitely be tools that will help. It'll help you a whole lot. I wish I had them when I was doing the PhD. It would have saved many, many, many months of library trips and misery. But you are still needing to add quite a lot. And so I zoom in a little bit more on that here. So those first two bullets, the reporting presentation, quick turnaround, I kind of described that. Journal article, kind of described that. PhD, I've just got a little bit more detail there. So PhD, I'm going to be doing multiple searches. Your PhD is going to be several years long. So you're going to have to be doing searches and coming back later on to do more searches, see if there's new things that have been published. You might have slightly different changes of perspectives that you need to adjust for. SciSpace has a find topics function, which is really helpful for brainstorming and narrowing down topics, particularly when you first get going. You will be getting information from other sources. So things like Zotero, where you've read some books, you've put that information into Zotero. Being able to combine that is going to be really handy, but you're not going to have all of your literature found in one spot for most of you. As I mentioned before, the chat with paper is really helpful, but I would be thinking about the summarization and writing stuff here as it'll get you going and give you some stuff to think about. But certainly for me, I've examined a number of PhDs, and if I received your PhD and it didn't look like you wrote the literature review and it was just a bit of a copy and paste from a summarization, then that would not bode well for you. So really important again, and I'm sure there'll be probably 10 more times where I mention it, is your brain and the human element really, really important to stack on top of these tools. But these tools are going to save you lots and lots of time. Okay, so we are going to change what we're looking at and we are going to jump over to SciSpace. So scispace.com, if you want to just give me a nod or a indication in the chat that everyone can now see SciSpace. Yes, excellent. Cool. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just, given a lot of you have never seen SciSpace before or not SciSpace users, a little bit of a kind of a general summary of stuff that's here. And then I will show you the literature review tool, and then I'll show you the agents that will do literature reviews, but they'll do more on top of the literature reviews as well. So here's our homepage, and if you've used ChatGPT or any AI, you'll see that familiarity of here's the text box in the start, and we've got some little adjusting things around it, and then some more info. We'll come back and we'll have a look at this. So the homepage is where we get agents to do stuff. But down the left-hand side here, we can see there's actually a whole lot of different headings of different spots and different tools. So my library, we can upload our own PDFs into the system to get it to include an analysis and to summarize. My notebooks, so that's where we would save summarization in any of our own writing. The agent gallery is pretty cool. If we click on that, starts off by showing the featured, and if you looked at these featured ones, you might go, oh, RNA, neuron, it's all biology stuff. But I think that's just because those are the most recently added ones, so they're kind of in the featured. But if we come down the bottom here, browse by domain, and for me, of course, I jump into the maths one, see what's going on there. And I mean, it says maths, but it includes stats as well. There's a power analysis calculator, stratified sampling, calculus solver, matrix calculator. So there's a whole lot of different AI-powered tools in here in the agent gallery. And this is worth noting because not only can we get the agents to do literature search, but we can kind of string commands together. So we can get them to go and look at some literature, find out some stuff, carry that stuff over into the next thing, into the next thing, into the next thing. So being aware of some of the things that we know the agents can definitely do because they've been programmed to do, like a power analysis, handy for us to know about. Okay, coming back to the side here. So that was the agent gallery. There's an AI writer. I'll help you with AI. There's chat with PDF. So we can put our own PDFs in there, but we can also, when we search up a PDF for a literature search, we can interact with the PDF. And that's going to be really, really handy if you're reading very technical documents, and really handy for those of you who are undergrad and PhD and maybe more newer to your domain, where it's kind of like having a tutor or a helper that can just explain stuff to you as you go. So it's really valuable. We've got literature review. We'll come back and look at that in detail in a second. Find topics is like a brainstorming tool with citation generator, paraphraser. Extract data, just we can throw a PDF in there and it will pull information out, and an AI detector. So let's jump into literature review. And so we can do literature reviews in this one that says literature review, and we can also do them up in the new chat or up in the agents area. So in our literature review, we can see we've got a text box. And if I click that, it suggests some possible searches. And I can do a standard, high quality, or deep review. And I've already cooked some. So the deep review in particular takes a little while to do. So depending on how complex, kind of independent if you're getting agents to do it, certainly a couple of minutes in here, maybe even a little bit longer sometimes if you get the agents doing something fancy. So I've already cooked up three for us to have a look at, and also to be able to contrast between the standard, the high quality, and the deep review. Up here, another thing that's quite cool is you can put in your research question, but if you kind of you know the kind of thing, but not quite sure. So if I was like creatine, muscle, something, it it'll take whatever you're putting. So if you're putting keywords in there, it will turn those into possible research. So there's three pretty good suggestions just based on the words that I put in there. So really, really helpful. But let's go and have a look at the ones that I've done. So we'll start with the standard. And so the standard, it gives us a short summary. It references 5 papers in our short summary. And then it gives us a table of 10 papers. And there's some filters that we can adjust to go and look at these if we like. We can save the summary to a notebook. We can export all of these references out to a reference manager. Something if you're PhDing and you're still figuring out exactly your topic, we've got this button here, Find Topics. So if I click Find Topics, then it's going to go off. We might need to come back to it. It's going to have a think. So my original question was the impact of microplastics. So this was something that I was doing some research for the environmental charity I'm involved with. And I can hit find topics and it will go away. It'll look at what it's collected and then it'll suggest either gaps in the research or possible narrowed research questions, which is really handy. So that's what the standard looks like. If we come back to literature review and we jump from standard to high quality, we can see that the summary got a bit longer. It now cites 10 papers. And then we've got the 10 papers all listed here. So we end up with a table of the papers. And if we scroll off to the side, we can actually add a whole lot of summary columns about, and so it'll tell us stuff about each paper. And we can even create our own one. So something I've done a few times is I might have something create a new column like sample size. And so it will pull the sample sizes out of all of the papers, and I'll just have a column that shows me that. But insights, results, and there's a bit more. We'll have a bit more of a deep dive of that in a second. So that was the high quality. And for just knocking out something really quickly, that's probably sometimes if your boss came to you and said, I need a one-page summary about the impact of microplastics on the environment, there we go, done. I would still check and verify the sources. I would still read this carefully to make sure it didn't say any nonsense. But it's generally pretty good. In fact, I say pretty good. I mean very good, actually. It's the New Zealander in me. You can definitely have the recording, those of you that are asking about recordings. Okay, so then we'll jump into the deep review. And so the deep review is takes longer. And up here, I can actually click out and it'll show you the steps. So the big difference on the deep review is I asked my initial question, it comes back and it asks clarifying questions. So I said, what is the impact of microplastics on the environment? And it said, oh, well, do you want to know about ecological impact, health implications, geographical focus, where are you interested in mitigation? So it asked me for clarification so it could give me the best possible summary. And so I answered that, and then it took off. And instead of using my admittedly pretty poor and pretty vague prompt, it started writing its own more detailed prompts based on what I asked plus my clarifying points. And then it started going through articles, searching. It does then a whole lot of filtering as well. So I'll hide those steps. So it went through 1,750 relevant kind of papers that were in the right ballpark, identified 412 that were relevant to what I was after. It then wrote the summary with the 50 most relevant, and you can see that now, if we pop this out, this is a serious summary. This, in fact, for if your boss says, give me a one pager, look at this. This just goes on and on and on, which including kind of tables with summarization and grouping. Um, like when you ask it to do a deep review, it gives you a serious deep review. And so if you are wanting to dive deeper into something, this is just amazing, so helpful. So that's a deep review. It now is really big and very detailed. And so in my table, I've now got 20 papers, but it says 20 out of 412. So if I scroll down to the bottom, it limits it to 20 so the page doesn't go forever, but I can click load more papers and it will show me the rest. Add next step. So from this, I can then give more commands and do more stuff. Um, okay. We'll leave the comment about the AI checkers to the end. Does it work in linguistics? Um, Deepak can probably give you some specific stats of numbers, but they have a very comprehensive access to just all sorts of research journals and databases. I have not searched for any domain and found it lacking, so it will absolutely have linguistics in there. The person that is asking about the linguistics. Okay, so we've got these summaries, uh, and that's pretty cool. Here's one. And if we click on Get PDF, there's a fairly recent edition. So even those of you that are um, have used SciSpace for a bit, if you haven't used it for a wee while, if I click on Get PDF, it can fire off a request to the authors, but you can also download from a library. So if you are at a university or a research institution that uses what's called libkey, and so this is answering the person about the paywalls, if I click download from library, I can connect to my institution, and there are thousands here. So any any reasonable ranked university should be in here, and if it's not, you should be able to go to your library and say, "Hey, set up libkey." So once you've set up your libkey, you can access the ones that are behind a paywall the same way you would through your university or your research institute library. So that's how it deals with paywalls. But if you don't have that, you can get it to filter down to open access as well. So if we go just open access or ones where you can access the PDF, you can filter down to those as well. Um, so super, super handy. Those of you that have known the hard ways of doing all this is pretty amazing. For every single one of these papers, you can get a summary. You can even get it as audio as a podcast, and then you can chat with it. All of them also have their DOI, so the digital digital object I forgot what the I is. That's pretty terrible. So if we click on our DOI here, identifier, thank you very much, digital object identifier. Um, it takes me to my source. So I can click on any of those DOIs. It will tell me, here is my journal article. In this particular case, it's got all the download in PDF. But to be able to verify that this is real, I click on that and takes me to the article. And so I can see that it is a real article. None of those concerns with hallucinations. And thank you for the person that added the DOI definition in the chat. Very helpful. Thank you. So if we come back, if we click on the DOI, it takes us there. If we click on the name of the article, it's going to pop up a new tab. And so on our new tab, we have podcast, we can access the PDF, we can save it, we can cite it. If we come down, we can chat with it. So there's some default things you can ask the paper or ask it, the chat bot about the paper. We can also throw it over to the agents as well. So here is lots of different things that I could get. I could get the agents to write a critical review of the paper, analyze the citations to find unaddressed research. There's lots and lots of stuff here. Prepare a practice quiz even. So pretty amazing, lots of stuff. And then I keep scrolling down. Here is the PDF. And I can, over on the chatbot on the right-hand side, I can ask questions, but within the PDF, I can just select something. If there's something that I don't know, like what is, I can select it, click on explain text, and I'll get an explanation. So for anything that's technical, if you are maybe studying a domain and every so often you get something with really complex maths, then it will give you explanations. Not only that, but if we click back in, and so there is a very detailed explanation of the garbage patch. It can even do that for maths and for graphs. So here's a graph. Graphs may be a little bit blurry, so fingers crossed it's helped. If I click on this, I can drag across any equation or any graph, and it will throw it into chat as an image, and then it will give me an explanation. And that, again, for those of you that are newer to the domain and just need a little bit of help with explanations, or even those of you that are more experienced and just every so often you get a paper and someone's just gone berserk with all the Greek letters and the algebra, and it's like, well, can you just explain to me in like normal language? Then really, really helpful. And so we can see there is interpretation of that graph. So that is chatting with paper. Super, super handy. Okay, so next up, that was all within the regular literature review. We'll come back to home. And next up, we are going to look at agents. So you notice I've got some credits up here. When we use the AI agents, it does use credits. So it is a finite resource. The literature reviews that I showed you, I think the deep reviews are limited to a certain amount. But the anything with the agents is using credits. The rest, the basic standard and the high quality literature review, you can just do as many as you like. So with the agent, we scroll down, there's some examples of stuff you can do. And so you can see there's all sorts of research related things here from deep review, like what I showed you, literature reviews, writing drafts, making PowerPoints, making infographics, making a PDF report, searching particular sites, using Python, all sorts of stuff. You can actually type whatever you like into this box. So you're not just limited to the stuff, but this stuff is here to help you. So I might click review literature, and you can see that it puts in the start of the prompt, and I tell it what I want the literature review about, and then if I want to filter them in a certain way. And then once I've done that literature review, Maybe I actually want that literature review to be turned into a PowerPoint presentation. And so I can click on that, and it's just going to say, do a literature review about the stuff, include papers that are less than 10 years old, whatever, whatever. Um, then create a PowerPoint summarizing the findings. And you can string multiple bits of this together. I can add my own in here as well. There is a little bit of learning and trial and error. Sometimes I've asked it to do stuff and it was very literal with what I asked it to do. It was kind of, but in general, it's pretty good. And certainly off all of the templated ones, very, very good. So I'm going to show you two that I have already done. The agents do take a little while to run, so that's again why I've kind of pre-baked these. So again, I was doing more of the microplastics work for the charity, and I got it to do a literature review about a particular component, and then I said do the literature review, and then I attach, and then as with the agent, I said do the literature review and then turn the key findings into an infographic. So here is my summary about microplastics and where they're originating and the ecological impacts and the human impacts. And here is the infographic. Now, I need to go and sit down, or I need to probably, particularly for this middle one, get a biologist to talk to and make sure all of this is correct. Always need to do your diligence, always need to check stuff's correct, particularly when we start passing data from kind of a component to component to component. Um, the but I was able to string those two together. So I'm going to show you one more example where I actually put three together. And again, this is kind of thinking about how a literature review for different people has different purposes as well. So those of you doing a PhD, you might imagine, I'm going to do a search and then I might get some summarization, but it's really helping me find the information, absorb the information. But at the end of my PhD, for you to be a doctor of something, you should be an expert in that thing. So as there was a comment that just went past a little while ago about it not replacing. And so you definitely need to maintain that knowledge. So this next one, again with microplastics. So this time I chained three things together. So my chain, and probably gets a bit messy if I try and scroll up to the original thing. So in my prompt for this one, I said, okay, we've been looking at microplastics, they're an environmental concern. Uh, do a deep literature review of mitigation strategies for microplastics. Then, so that was the first component. Then pass that into the search of grants.gov and search for any grants that match to those mitigation strategies. And then third step, create a presentation for me to take to the board, which has the grants that are possible. So that was chaining three different things together. And so if we go back and we have a look, um, I now have these slides where we've got these different microplastics removal things, and then US federal grant programs that's going to line up to. In fact, even including like contact emails, size of awards, deadlines, all of that pulled for me from the agents. And then key research sources, it's got some references in there as well. And again, before I presented that to the board, I would go and I would check all of these are correct. Um, it is my reputation that's on the line with whatever I produce as a researcher and an academic. But how much time did that save me by doing the literature search, feeding that into checking the grants that match up to it, feeding that into the draft of my presentation? So super, super handy stuff. So all of that happens within the agents. Um, to give you a feel for how many credits, so the credit use depends on how big and how complex the thing is you ask it to do. I think it was like 83 credits, or kind of just slightly over 80 credits for that three-step with a deep review, the searching of the grants.gov, and producing the slides on top of it. So whichever of the plans, if you have 1,000 or 5,000, you're going to be able to do plenty. Okay, so we've got tons and tons of questions. What I might do is have a quick scroll through and just see if there's any that are immediately about what I have on the screen before I go back to the slides. Cool. Now, I think what we will do is we will take you away. We'll come back to the slides. I'll talk a little bit about ethics and integrity, and then I think we will finish off the Q&A at the end. Um, excellent, Joe Shanfu. Excellent thing. That was the one thing I forgot. Up the top here, connect apps and import data. And if we click on that, Zotero, Mendeley, OneDrive, GitHub, Notion, and Slack coming soon. All of those you can integrate. So if you have a Zotero library, you can connect it and then you can access it within SciSpace. So yes, good spotting, and thank you for highlighting that. That was the one thing that somehow escaped my brain. Okay, there is an excellent question there about echo chambers that I think is overlapping into one of these. So ethics and integrity, some of this I've kind of been bashing on about throughout this whole talk because it is really important to me. So some things that all of you should know, particularly if you're a student, but as an academic as well. Absolutely know your institution's AI policies. What are the policies on education, on research, on all of the work that you're doing? Anywhere where you are producing a publication and submitting to a journal, you should know their policies as well. So that is absolute baseline. Know what the rules of your institution are, because otherwise you might get yourself into trouble. Beyond this, think what is appropriate for your particular task. I've seen a number of people asking about AI detectors. AI detectors are unreliable. They are discriminatory. Most places are stopping to use them. Some places still do use them. But if you are producing work and you are trying to skirt a detector because you know you're doing something wrong, you are going to get caught out at some point, either by an accidental copy and paste or putting something that is wrong and a particularly stupid into a publication. Or at some stage, you're going to get found out because someone is going to ask you a question and you won't know an answer. And I've even pre-AI, I've come across some people like that where they'd worked unethically through their career and then they got found out at some point and then that was the end of them. So I would absolutely discourage any behavior where you go, I need to make sure people don't know this because I'm cheating. Just don't do that. Think what is appropriate for the task that you're doing. And so I gave some examples earlier on about for a PhD, there's going to be a lot more of you and you absorbing information than if you are doing something that is just like a simple fact check. Always check anything and verify anything produced by AI. It's really important, hopefully fairly obvious. Be very mindful of anything you upload to AI systems. There's privacy implications, there's ethics implications, there's IP implications. Again, coming back to that comment about people and detectors, really think carefully about what's your contribution to your discipline. If you are a copy and paste machine, why would I hire you? So information is important and nuance and detail in particular. So my next point, AI can miss that nuance. That's where you as a subject expert are going to ensure, at least for the next little bit, that you're not replaceable by AI. Second to last point there, the thematic blindness or algorithm bias. Be really careful algorithms do have a tendency to kind of converge on a common thing. So there was a question there, the echo chamber effect, DKP. You do need to be very careful and make sure you're kind of looking outside at references and other perspectives in your domain. Last one, you should be acknowledging where AI has been used in your work. So some journals, and in fact, I did have an example. Here is an example of an article that I wrote. That's me. So I wrote an article about AI in medical education. And at the end of the article, we can see that this journal has this declaration. So when I submitted, I had to make a declaration about how I used AI. And then, very key thing here, I accepted full responsibility for the content. And then the details were declared to the editors. So for this article, scroll up, so the top of the article was about AI. It seemed reasonable to use some AI. One of the two things that I used was SciSpace. So I used SciSpace for some of my literature review. I wrote my own literature review by hand myself, but it was strongly informed by all of the papers that SciSpace helped me to find. And I declared that. So that was declared up front. And then I used ChatGPT just for a little bit of brainstorming and ideation. And again, just was very transparent and made sure that I uh, told the editors that's what I had done. So all of this really, really important. If you want to continue to have a career in research and academia, now that there are these amazing tools, um, you having that contribution, you demonstrating ethics and integrity are going to be really important.